Hello, and welcome to our series, Women in E-Mobility, Accelerating Women in the E-Mobility Sector. I'm Dr. Shelley Francis, co-founder and managing partner at EV Noir. EV Noir's work centers on electric connected, shared, and autonomous mobility technology. And so we focus on two areas of work: e-mobility best practices and e-mobility diversity, equity, and inclusion. So during this series, hopefully you've been joining us along the way, we'll talk with leaders working across the e-mobility sector, and we focus on engaging women leaders. Our conversations center on their career trajectories, how they got started working on electrification, what it's like working in the sector, what are those emerging issues and trends that they're seeing. So as many of you are aware, we're obviously in the middle of a huge shift around transportation, particularly around how we conceive, power, and innovate our sector, as well as how we're just marketing information and sharing information about various forms of electrification. Now, this also helps spur and drive a huge shift in economic opportunities. So there's no better time than now to just dive in and talk more about what's happening in the sector. So today's session is brought to you by our team at EV Noir and EV Her. We're excited to talk with Erika Myers today. And Erika is the executive director of the nonprofit CharIN Interface Initiative North America, as frequently known as CharIN. And they are a leading global association with over 300 members who are dedicated to promoting electric vehicle charging standards across the world. So, Erika, we are excited to have you here as part of the Women in E-Mobility series. So, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Shelley.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So, we're going to have a really good conversation today. I'm really excited to dive in. So, let's start off by giving our viewers more context about your work and your expertise. So, tell us about CharIN and the type of work that you lead there.
Sure. CharIN is the largest international association for EV charging. We have members from all over the world who are in the electric vehicle charging, hardware and software space, as well as all of the ecosystem that supports EV charging. We have over 300 members right now, 70 of which are headquartered here in North America. So we are very actively involved in helping to set the direction of charging standards and supporting interoperability of those standards.
Awesome. That's a big role and heavy responsibility. I love that. And we're going to take a deeper dive into that. Another area that I want to focus on too, or at least bring to attention, is that in addition to working at CharIN, of course, you founded EV Love, and that's a platform that's dedicated to electrifying mobility one woman at a time. And obviously, we're in the Women in E-Mobility series, so definitely want to talk a little bit more about that. And so we know that increasing diversity in this sector is critically important. From recent studies, we know that women make up over 3/4 or so of decisions around vehicle purchases, but then we only make up about a third of the workforce. And so obviously there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. But in the meantime, let's talk a little bit about your experiences being a woman in this space and just what it means to be a woman in the emerging EV industry.
So I've been working in the vehicle space for 17 years, and it's been amazing to see the trajectory of the industry over this period of time, especially within the last, I would say 5 to 10 years is where we're seeing the most growth and innovation. But what I haven't seen as much of is a lot of diversity in the industry. It's been a lot of folks who've come from engineering, both the automotive side, the utility side, the communications tech side, solar industry, and a lot of those industries have also been very male dominated. And so it's not surprising that when you have these kind of shifts between tech that you'll see similarities within the EV space. And having worked in this for a long time, I noticed a lot of gaps in female leadership and female knowledge and expertise that are contributing to the design and functionality and attributes of our charging network. And so when I founded EV Love, it was during COVID, actually. I had a lot of spare time doing nothing, being at home, not traveling. And so I decided to pour myself into this passion project to really highlight what the discrepancies were between The male buyers versus female buyers. So as you mentioned, 75% of purchasing decisions are made by women, but only 25% of the EVs were being purchased by women back when I was doing the study initially in 2020. So I wanted to dig into why is that and what are the ways that the industry can directly tackle this discrepancy. And what I found was that it comes down to the design of the vehicles, the way we communicate about the vehicles. So, for example, a lot of people were touting the torque of the vehicle and the 0 to 60 in X amount of seconds, and like these are messages that women do not care about, right? Like we want to know, where can I store all of my stuff for my kids? How long is how long does it take for me to have to charge between sessions? Like how do I fit this into my life? What are the things that I care about the most? Saving time, so I don't have to have oil changes. I don't need to go to the gas station. I can charge at home. It's extremely appealing and easy. These are not messages that were being relayed at the time by the industry. And we were only talking about kind of the cool features of the tech, but without relaying that in terms of the practicalities that a lot of women are coming at a car purchasing decision. And another thing that I've really noticed over the course of time is how we're deploying the charging infrastructure. So unfortunately, we're putting them in places that are the least expensive, which oftentimes are behind buildings or not necessarily in the most convenient places for parking. So lower levels of the parking decks, which also happen to be the least safe places, the darkest corners, the places that are not very well lit or secure. And so these are problems for women who think about our safety on a regular basis. And when we see these kinds of charging locations, our first reaction is, I got to get out of here. Right. And so we need more women who are bringing these perspectives to the table when they're working in teams to point out these kinds of thought processes to our male colleagues.
No, I really that resonates with me because I think even thinking we did some work for one of the OEMs in terms of helping them understand women's attitudes, knowledge, beliefs in terms of how to market an EV launch, so a new EV product to them. And that was a lot of what you shared are things that came up in terms of just like safety, charging location, even things like simple things like where would I put like my purse or a backpack in the vehicle, and having a female voice as the voiceover artist versus having a male voice on the voiceover artist is just some simple things that women brought out in some of those focus groups. So definitely can understand the importance of like really knowing your audience and doing strategies, education, marketing that is culturally relevant to that particular target market. Um, Being an EV driver, because I know we're both EV drivers and have probably been EV drivers for quite some time, what do you think about how the technology has advanced? Because obviously we've seen so much change even in the last, like you were saying, 5 years, last couple of years.
Yeah.
I know for me personally, when I first started driving an EV, which is almost 10 years ago, my range was like 90 miles. And that was like, oh my gosh, I have 90 miles. Now, the EVs that are coming out today, the minimum that typically you're seeing is around 250, 300 around the norm. And so just can you talk a little bit about what, being an EV driver, owner, how that has impacted your work and how you move and operate in this space?
Yeah, so I have been an all EV household since 2020. So we've had 4 years of being all electric, and I would say it's been fantastic in terms of our general experience. When we decided to buy that second EV, it was because of our experience with the first EV, which was the 90-mile range one that you're mentioning, was so good. We were saving a ton of money. We were using it as our primary commuter car at the time. This is before COVID, when we still had to go into the office. And we were like really happy with the charging experience at home and not having to do oil changes. And the car was so much cheaper to maintain than our gas car. So we finally were like, okay, we can pull the cord, so to speak, and get a second EV. but we absolutely needed something that had the longer range, that had the faster charging speeds, so
Mhm.
that we can depend on it for the trips that we take, road trips that we take to see our family in adjacent states. So we needed something that was going to be reliable and a good charging experience. So we did that, and I would say that it's been a phenomenal experience so far. We've had really no hiccups with charging away from home. There's the occasional broken charger, but then you can always, look at your app and you can find another one close by. So we have not encountered a lot of the issues that a lot of folks talk about, but I know that they exist, and that's why CharIN is here, right? To make sure that everybody has a fantastic charging experience, and that the charging experience is as good as, if not better, than the gas station experience. And I think we can all say that the gas station experience is not that great either. Gas stations are also not very safe. Gas stations, they typically are not the cleanest facilities, and the shock at the pump. Everybody hates to see the spike in price, and then you drive away with having spent $60 that you're gonna you burn up very quickly. So I think that there's a lot of reasons why EV charging can be a better overall experience. We just got to make sure that, again, every charger works with every car, and that is a seamless and easy experience, that there's no confusion over which connector works with my car, which is another thing. Like, we oftentimes are talking about connectors and technical jargon, right? That confuses the average consumer. So we have to get past calling it NACS. We have to get past calling it CCS. We have to get past calling it J1772. We got to actually have terms that people know and that understand and they remember. And so I think the sooner we can transition into something more mature in terms of the acronyms and the language that we use to talk about the different charging connectors, the better.
No, I like that because my parents are not sitting around talking about the J1772 charger.
No, nobody is.
Right, right.
Industry people might, but
Right, exactly. Well, let's talk a little bit more about your career path because it's really fascinating. And I know our viewers are really curious about that. So, obviously, you have had quite an impressive record in terms of holding positions at ICF, the South Carolina Energy Office, the Smart Electric Power Line, SEPA, and then also World Research Institute. So, what was your path like? Did you always know that you wanted to work in the transportation or the electrification sector? How did you get here?
I think, like a lot of people, I kind of fell into the industry at an early part of my career. I actually got introduced to clean energy and alternative transportation fuels when I started working at the South Carolina Energy Office roughly 17 years ago is when I started that work. And I just fell in love with both the opportunity as well as the set of challenges, right? When you're talking about an entrenched system, which energy has been entrenched, and it's been very similar from basically the start of the production of electricity 100 plus years ago. It's not changed very much. And so the idea of being involved in this hugely transformative industry where everything is going to be different was very exciting to me. I wanted to be on the leading edge of it. And I would say that my career has largely been focused on learning. So understanding all of the different aspects of a transition. So I've worked at it from the for-profit side, the nonprofit side, government. I've worked at it from advocacy and philanthropic funding of transformative change. And what I'm doing now with the trade association is really understanding the industry perspectives that go into such a major change. And it's really been fascinating from being this kind of outsider who's coming at it from so many different perspectives, to see that this is really tough. This isn't just something that we can just check a box and things happen. Like, we have got to, as an industry, from an industry perspective, we've got to work with all these different stakeholders and at the same time convince consumers that this is a great alternative to what they've always known. And change is really tough. And change is is probably the toughest thing that you can work on, honestly, is transformative systems change. It's not like this little piecemeal thing. Okay, we're gonna work on an industry that fine tunes a process that already exists. The jobs that are existing now didn't exist 10 years ago. The jobs that will exist in 10 years from now do not currently exist. So there's just constant evolution of this space. And I guess for me, I'm addicted to uncertainty. I guess is how I would characterize my career.
Oh no, I love that. I think that obviously it's great to be able to approach this issue from all those different perspectives, because I'm sure like they've been building and now it informs what you're doing right now. So
Yeah.
you can think about charging infrastructure in all these different lenses or with these different hats on, and you can kind of weigh the pros and cons, and you have an idea of what some of these other sectors are thinking or considering, or maybe how they're looking at charging infrastructure related issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think the charging infrastructure is probably the most challenging part of all of this. And it continues to be cited as one of the top reasons people don't buy an electric vehicle is the uncertainty around charging. Will I get stranded? How do I know where to charge? What is it going to cost? How do I sign up for these different charge operations and make sure I have access to the charging? uh, this it's just such a set of uncertainty for most people that it feels scary. And when you're making probably the second highest cost item of your household, your purchasing decision for a new vehicle, it can be very intimidating if you don't know where you're going to be charging on a regular basis. It's one thing if you have the ability to charge at home, but if you are a buyer that one of the many buyers who doesn't have a dedicated parking space or dedicated charger access, it's almost an impossible decision. And so we have got to make this really, really, really easy for the average consumer. It's got to be uh, as easy as buying a light bulb or as easy as any other energy efficiency thing that we have available now. It's got to be as easy as that for someone to make the decision to switch. So,
No, absolutely, absolutely. I think when we do research, across the country, the range and charging access, or where do I charge, are some of the things that really come up and resonate with consumers that we have interviewed. And so, the more that we can obviously deploy charging infrastructure, for particularly for folks who don't have access to charging at home, as well as I think part of what's missing is doing the education and outreach and engagement to have, let people really know like what the full experience of having an EV is like. So talking about like the benefits, also talking about, charging the pros and the cons, the good and bad of charging, to really help kind of normalize what that looks like.
exactly. It's what you guys are doing is incredibly important. So I applaud EV Noir for tackling also probably one of the bigger challenges, which is multi-unit family dwelling charging. It's such a tough nut to crack. So I applaud you guys for that.
Yes, thank you for that. So we have to work, collaboratively. As they say, it like when you're raising children, it takes a village. It takes a village to get this electrification rollout, amplified and accelerate adoption, as well as understanding of it. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is that, obviously we're both, women in the space, and in anyone's career path, male, female, or other, having like mentorship, having folks and allies that can help us navigate our career path, employment, is often really impactful and important to folks. And so for me, myself, I know I'm not sure where I would be if I didn't have mentorship from different folks throughout my career. And so obviously one of the things that we do as an organization, it's really important for us to try to create pathways and opportunities for folks who are coming behind us. And so that's one of the reasons we started our e-mobility fellowship program. And that program, for folks who are not aware, it's a 9-month curriculum, and it's followed by an internship. It targets college students, but not just college students. So we target students who are in trade and technical schools, community colleges, historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, tribal institutions, as well as veteran serving institutions. So the idea is we want to increase the number of folks from different backgrounds, particularly underrepresented, so that they can help inform, this policy practice pilots. You mentioned, Erika, that we needed more women sitting at these tables thinking about like in charging infrastructure deployment. So don't put the charging behind the building in a dark alley that has a big trash can around it so somebody could jump out and potentially hurt folks. So those are some of the things that, if you don't have the different experiences, folks with different lived experiences sitting at those tables and in those meetings, they may not come up. So can you talk a little bit about maybe what mentorship has meant to you as you navigated your career?
Yeah, I've had quite a few mentors as well, and I've also found that mentors have kind of evolved in my life as I've reached different stages. And so I've also started what I call my like personal board of directors, because that for me is more time sensitive, right? It's people who are my age with my career situation and in the space who generally have the same constraints I do, like family, family issues and prioritization of my personal versus my career. And so I kind of bring these people in as the people that I go to for advice, right? Especially if I'm thinking about a pivot in some certain way related to my work. And you need those kinds of people because in this space, it's constantly changing. Our whole industry seems to be changing on a like very regular basis. So
right.
You need people that you can go to for advice, information, digesting the rumor mill, figuring out what's real, what's not real, and also when it comes to new opportunities, understanding who's behind it. What are the reasons for that particular new role? What kind of dynamics will I expect in this new role? What changes might be forecasted for this type of position in the future? And you need these people because, again, it's not like we're in an established industry. It's constantly changing. And so you have to be okay with some levels of uncertainty in your career, but you buffer that and de-risk it a little bit by building this network of people that you surround yourself with.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the board of directors because Camille Terry from Charge of Help was on a few weeks ago, and we were talking about like mentorship and allies, and we talked about the board of directors and like having this group of folks who are kind of helping you shepherd through your career path. And I love the way that you explained how they're helping you navigate both the professional side as well as the personal side. And I think having that intentionality is so important because we can get so overwhelmed and caught up in the professional side that we forget that, yes, we should have a personal side and it's okay. And we don't have to apologize for, focusing on that side of our lives as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, now we're going to actually talk about the personal side. So that's a good segue. So we have a fun segment in our interviews where it's called 5 Fun Facts, right? And so the idea is we ask you a series of questions just to have a little bit more insight in how you spend time away from the electrification and charging infrastructure world. So I'm going to start off with your first question. So where's your favorite place to vacation? Is it, if you have 3 choices, is it a beach, is it the city, or the mountains?
I like all 3. Is that an answer? I love every place. I love cities because they're just so vibrant and usually have I love art museums and I love culture and food. But I also love mountains because, you kind of get this nice perspective of how how small you are compared to some of these massive geological amazing places. And I also love the beach because I love hearing the sound of the waves, and I love the ocean in general. It's just such an amazing place. I love sea turtles and whales. So I don't know. I'm I don't have a preference.
Okay. I love that you have there's something about each place that is dear to you and it means something. So
Yeah.
that's an answer within itself. So that's fine to pick all three. So the next question is about traveling. So I'm sure in your role you're doing quite a bit of travel. And I know over the years, like you've been, traveling a lot too now that we've come out of
Mhm.
COVID. So when you travel, what would you describe as your best travel hack? Like what is like something that you're like, oh,
Mm.
this is just kind of like a rule or a strategy, a technique that I use that works for me?
I'm still figuring out my travel hacks.
Mhm,
But I would say it's more of a philosophy, right? So when you're planning a trip,
mhm,
sometimes you can get a little bit overzealous in scheduling every single detail. And
mhm.
I think for me, I start out my trip with low expectations. So I go into a place and I'm like, it could be great, it could be not great, and it's okay. Because then if it's great, then you are pleasantly surprised. If it's not great, then you met expectations. So
Mhm, mhm.
I think that sometimes, we put too much hope and aspiration that this one vacation or this one trip will hit all these things for us, and so sometimes doesn't work out, especially if you're bringing kids along with you, that
Yeah,
somebody could get sick, and then you have to spend the rest of your trip inside the hotel room. So
great.
I think that's for me, it's a philosophy that's worked really well.
Okay, that sounds good. So, question number three: when you're traveling, what's the one thing that you won't leave home without?
My cell phone, I mean, I feel like that's the obvious answer, but everything is linked to my phone. When I'm traveling, I've got everything there. So I don't lose documents or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's almost like your computer on the go, basically
Yeah.
slash purse.
Yeah.
That
And a cell phone plan that works in every country.
is very
Gotta
important.
have
Yes,
that.
that's very key. That I've definitely put onto my plan because it works like that. So yes.
Hmm.
Um, Last two questions. So, what are you reading right now? Like, do you have
Oh gosh.
a favorite book that you're in the middle of or wanting to
So
read?
guilty pleasure book, the Bridgerton series.
So, which part are you in?
I have read all of the main ones. Now
Okay.
I'm on the other side novels that are supporting the Bridgerton narrative.
I
So
didn't realize that there were so many of them.
yeah, she's a very prolific author.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm also really big into uh, any kind of fantasy fiction, and so Sarah Moss is my new favorite author. I got finished with the Court of Thorn and Roses series. Like it's such
Okay.
a huge set of novels, but I just devoured it. And then now I'm on the Throne of Glass series,
Okay.
which is
Now,
even bigger.
do you do audiobooks or do you actually do the paper
I
hardback?
do well, no, I do Kindle
Okay.
because I don't have space for more books
Okay.
at my house.
Okay. All right. I understand. That sounds good. Um, then my last question is, so what form of mobility or transportation did you last use?
I mean, other than my EV.
Well,
Um,
it could be your ride share, e-bike, personal vehicle, light rail, plane.
I mean, I use all those things, Shelly, on like a weekly basis. It feels like I use the metro to get downtown. I
Mhm.
use my car to like do errands in my neighborhood. I was just on a plane on Wednesday.
Okay.
I used Uber to get to and from the plane. So I mean, I feel like I'm using every form of transportation except e-bikes. That's
Okay.
one I would like to do more of. I do have a goal of eventually buying an e-bike
Mm,
to replace some of my trips,
right. Okay.
but I have no place to keep it yet, and they're really heavy, so it's not like you can just bring them inside and put them in the basement or something. Like
Yes. I
there's got
um,
to be a dedicated space for it.
it's true. I have an e-bike right now, and it is behind some theater chairs in the garage that need to go in the basement. And so I'm starting to do like my bike tune up. So I have like a regular bike and an e-bike, and every time I pass my regular bike, because I got the regular bike right before COVID, and so that was one of my activities, like my husband, friends, family. We did bike riding because that was one of the few things we could actually do together and be outside. And when I pass my poor regular bike, I'm just like, oh, I'm so sad. Like I need to get out and spend more time with you. And
Oh no.
I just like regular bike too, but sometimes I'm just like, I just want to like ride and not pedal. And then maybe some days I do want to pedal. So I'm kind of torn between my regular bike and my e-bike. See the value in both. So keep your e-bikes, keep your regular bike, just get out there and do something. And
Exactly.
use zero emissions transportation. All right. So we're almost, wrapping up, but I wanted, before we wrap up, I wanted just for you to leave us with some like words of wisdom. So,
Hmm.
in terms of thinking about career opportunities and maybe getting into the space, what would be two pieces of advice that you would offer to individuals or women specifically who are interested in working in the e-mobility or clean transportation space? What two pieces of advice or words of wisdom
Hmm.
would you offer to them?
So my advice, there's a lot of advice, but if I had to boil it down, would be number one, networking. So Women of Electric Vehicles is a fantastic network that you should definitely tap into if you're in the industry or thinking about being in the industry.
Mhm,
I'm a web member myself. Womenofevs.com, I think is the website
mhm,
to go to for information about local programming. We also have national and international programming as well if you're outside of the US. So that's a great one. Building your network, getting to know people in the space, using them as references, using them for all those bits of things that we talked about earlier with your board of directors. That is really important. Number two, I would say for women who are planning to get into the space, just look on. There's a plethora of information online. Get familiar with what industry resources are out there. Maybe sign up for some trainings. CharIN has what we call CharIN Academy, which is online trainings that you can take to learn any number of technical skills related to EV charging, interoperability standards, application of those standards. And don't be afraid to maybe try something that you haven't tried before. If you are in an engineering field or a computer sciences field or some other technical field, and you are interested in potentially moving into the EV space, there's lots of opportunities for you. The water is really nice. People are really nice. Everyone here is really passionate about what we do. I think that's something that's like maybe differentiates us from maybe other industries. It's just the level of enthusiasm for what we're doing. We're actually contributing to the future of the world, right? With climate change around the corner, we really have to be thoughtful about how we're spending our time and energy. And I feel like there could not be a better space for you than to work in the clean tech industry and the climate tech industry. And I'd encourage you to, if you're making a pivot, to consider that as you're exploring your options.
That's incredible, really wonderful and sage and wise feedback, Erica. Thank you so much for sharing that. And, thank you so much for joining us today. We have really enjoyed hearing and learning from you. And that is exactly what the Women in E-Mobility series is about.
Well, thank you so much, Shelley, for doing this and for hosting these series. And you're making a huge impact in the lives of so many women as well through your leadership and the mentorship program that you mentioned. So thank you for your contributions to this space.
Well, thank you very much. I receive that and accept it. So Thank you again. She's Erika Myers, Executive Director of CharIN. Thank you to our viewers for tuning in and to our team at EV Noir for supporting this series. And please stay tuned and check out other sessions as well so that you can learn more about the role of these wonderful women leaders in this sector. So stay tuned. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, IG, LinkedIn at Evie Noir or Dr. Evie Shelley. And also please follow Erika on her social media platforms. Erika, do you want to shout out your social media platforms too?
I use LinkedIn primarily. So yeah, just find me on LinkedIn, Erika Myers.
Awesome. So, everyone, on behalf of Evie Noir and Evie Her, this is Dr. Shelley Francis, and we will see you next time to chat more with women in e-mobility. Take care.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.